What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
Our guest today is Andrea Wanerstrand, who is the founder and CEO of A3 Culture Lab. And what I love about her journey is that she partners with organizations everywhere from startups to global brands, specifically for a purpose. And that's to cultivate these human-centric cultures. Part of her brand and her background is two global brands. One is we know when we pick up a phone. As a matter of fact, I just switched over 2 years ago, thank God, for T-Mobile. And went from there to spend 14 years with Microsoft, where she was in charge of their performance capability on a global basis. And so we're going to spend some time talking today about this whole concept of I love this human-centric cultures. So welcome to the show, Andrea.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, super. So let's dive into this thing. Because when I saw this human-centric culture, for our listeners or whatever, tell us your definition of that.
Well, first and foremost, culture to me at its essence is based in the how. It's the how work gets done and by the who. And so, how leaders make others feel and, how small mistakes are addressed and how much trust is there truly there. So, the A3 that I have stands for authenticity and autonomy and accountability. And so that authenticity is how leaders are showing up, and all of us actually are showing up in our day to day interactions with others that are, you know, humans, right? We interact with our computers and AI, et cetera. But how do we show up consistently and do we do it authentically? And what I mean by authentic is do you show up in a consistent manner that is true to who you are? I don't believe in oversharing. I'm a big Brene Brown fan, but it's just in being authentically yourself and not being an actor on a stage or playing a role per se.
Hmm.
And then the autonomy is allowing others to actually live to their fullest, be able to contribute and be able to be then held accountable both for the successes as well as the misses, because we're humans, there will be misses, but out of those misses, great possibilities lie.
Yeah, it's huge, especially this whole concept I'm going to start off with this word authenticity. Because when I come from Canada, grew up in South Louisiana, moved to Houston, Texas, and that's been decades ago, no longer years. And it's I listen for words, and I grew up on a tractor and a farm, and we never worried about being your authentic self because it just wasn't part of culture, it wasn't part of the discussion. And for help me define that word, your authentic self. What does that look like to you?
I think today, well, for the longest time, when we go to the office, it's our work self. A lot of folks go, well, that's not personal, that's work. But it at its essence, it's really being genuine, sincere,
Mhm.
true to oneself and others. So yes, it's a lot like I live in the country now. I own a lavender farm, and I will find the folks that are around me don't put up with any city pretense, if you
That's
will.
it. That's it.
But in a professional setting, authenticity fosters trust and credibility, right?
Hmm.
It involves showing up consistently in a way that's true rather than, like I was mentioning, performing like an actor on a stage. If you think you need to be all bluster because, that's how you get things done through others, that's not sustainable. So, really being authentic is the easiest thing that you can do in the end because it is sustainable.
Yeah.
And that sustainability is the consistency that's necessary just to create an environment where people trust you.
Yeah, and since you and I both, you mentioned that you own a lavender farm now outside of Seattle. So this we have this common. We didn't do lavender. We had soybeans is what we were farming. But you know what? As you're saying this, Andrew, I never really thought of this before. But I know in the farming community, um, authenticity is everything. It has to do
Hmm.
with. I remember my dad would talk about the fact that the person, the way that they showed up, that's who they were. In other
Absolutely.
words, that's who they were, and you judged them by their actions, and more importantly, by their reactions.
Hmm. Oh,
By
yeah.
the reactions, because that's what happens is that this our authentic self sometimes can get a little bit blurred whenever we are responding to situations and circumstances, especially when times are chaotic. And now I'm talking about things hypothetically. I realize in today's culture, we're not dealing with chaos or chaotic environment or
Hopefully not.
uncertainty. Oh, come on. It's just pop open the internet and see what's happening on a global basis right now, right? And so
Exactly.
because of this, I told you this whenever we were introducing ourselves before the show. I really wanted to meet you because when I saw something that you had written, what worries you masters you. And
Hmm.
that spoke so loudly to me. So why is tell me why is that important to you? Why do you speak about that?
When we focus on what's worrying us, when we let the fear, the uncertainty really take control, it is literally impossible for our brain to be creative. Our brain does not function in a solid, creative, problem solving fashion. And half of what we think is not real. So, what I mean by that is if we're worrying about all the possibilities of what can go wrong, we're not actually taking the steps forward to make things go the way we want them to. And so, what worries you masters you is just a phrase that I've used in speaking in organizations regarding if you're focusing on the worry instead of what you want, your energy, and I'm all about maintaining your energy and
Hmm.
being optimal with your energy is going literally down the drain, and it's draining you, and it's going to take longer. So what worries you does truly physically and emotionally master you.
Yeah, that's the reason why I didn't tell you why that spoke so loudly to me is the listeners have heard me speak about this on the show before. If you haven't, I spent over 15, 16 years of my life suffering from severe panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
To a point that I had a hard time getting on airplanes, couldn't ride elevators, escalators, drive across bridges. And so, for the fact that I get a chance to do what I do today is nothing short of a blessing. But that whole thing of fear it was false. The panic attacks were not because of stuff that was happening. It was the fear of what might happen or how
Mm-hmm.
somebody might respond to me, which meant that from an EQ, an emotional intelligence standpoint, um, I wasn't responding to my environment the way that I should or need to. Um, you have spent a lot of time trying to deal with helping leaders specifically sort of manage their environments. I was going to use the word control. I'm not sure that's the right word. But, to be able to help manage EQ, emotional response to situations and circumstances, because you are driving performance on a global basis. I mean, that's a lot of people with a lot of reach. What were the challenges that you ran into that you had to help the leaders steer their way through?
Yeah, you mentioned the tension and using the word control. I use the word intentional. And are you setting expectations with the intention to drive the team, drive the ship, whatever you're accountable for, in the right direction for the outcome that you're trying to achieve?
Hmm.
And so the challenges there is allowing transparency, setting clear expectations, keeping people accountable. And that includes motivating, because when people talk about accountability, they think, oh, I've got to give them feedback so that they either course correct or they don't get it wrong. But accountability is to keep doing the good stuff in a continuous way as well. And you need to motivate people to do that. So, how you show up, what intention you're setting, how you're carrying your energy if you come out of one really tough meeting and you go right into the next one, your presence, your energy, how you're like emotionally charged at that moment, which has nothing to do with that second meeting or the individuals in it, can have a direct impact. And if you don't reset or at least say to them, hey, I need a moment, I'll be right back, they're going to actually start making up stories. They're going to like, oh, they're in a bad mood today, or something must be wrong, or, ooh, did the numbers come in bad on the fiscal report? I mean, we as humans fill in the blanks.
Mm.
So that consistency, the ability to manage your energy from moment to moment and know that there is a domino effect when you're in a leadership role, that is hierarchical in that instance. I think we're all leaders in every organization, is one of the most critical things that you can do to foster and cultivate your team to have a trusting environment so that they can tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear.
Yeah, that's I hadn't really thought about this before, but yeah, I spend a lot of time, the work that I do, helping people identify the stories that we're making up because of
Mm-hmm.
my anxiety, period in my life I was dealing with. I was making up stories, and it's like that of what might happen, and so I became sensitive to that. I never really thought of that with this before, Andrea. That as leaders, we have the ability to help the stories that are being made up by the people that we're interacting with, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if they only have limited amount of time with you, they're going to try to interpret everything you say, every look that you make, your facial expressions. Um, and so, how consistent are you in your behavior? And if you're having a really bad day, don't go to work. Literally, don't go to work. You, as a leader, can do more harm in showing up on a really bad day for yourself with the team, um, than anyone else on the team, just for the fact that you're probably going to be in a position not to be able to share what the bad day is about. And this is where, in a hybrid environment, working remote might be beneficial, because you can't undo one really bad day if you're not able to navigate with consistency and intentionality, and master those emotional awareness.
Yeah. So I want to cue in on a word you said earlier, which is reset.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that from a leadership standpoint, the great challenge we have is we're dealing with circumstances a lot of times that are outside of our control because we're trying to get work done through other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so we are doing two things, right? We're trying to reset the team, which I'll come to in a minute, because I think the first thing we have to do is reset ourselves to be able to respond effectively. My definition of EQ is, do I react or do respond effectively? And so,
100%.
yeah, so to tell our listeners your thoughts, because you do a lot of work in this area about emotional energy, and what are two or three things that I need to factor in my head that when I recognize, and I think a good leader recognizes, okay, I got to reset here. What can I do?
Yeah, it can be literally as simple as, before you hit the connect button for your team call or walk into a room, take a deep breath. Ask yourself the simple question of, how do I need to show up for these people? And see if anything's out of alignment. Are you really tense? Are you um, really joyous and you're going into a very somber, serious discussion? I mean, it can go both sides of the
Mm-hmm.
spectrum, but it can be as simple as that. I am a big fan and teacher of meditation. And if you're too busy to meditate, at least for 5-10 minutes on a daily basis, then you probably need meditation even more, just for the fact it is one of the deepest things that we can do in a conscious state to really align our emotional nervous system, as well as get ready to focus. It's not clearing all thoughts from your head, and there's different types of meditation. but dedicating a time where you're going to set some intentions for the day and be able to have gratitude and be able to really just focus on you and where you're at for that moment. If that was as simple for meditation for you as possible, just doing that for 5 to 10 minutes at the start of your day would change how you show up in the rest of your day on a consistent basis.
It'd be powerful. And that feeds into something I'm starting to spend more time talking about and writing about. I call it the 3 second pause. We think that we have to immediately, fire, but there's so much power. It's not meditation. I'm not going to put it in that same category, but that 3 second pause, what it does allow the synapses to reset, take a breath. It helps you to recenter so that you can bring more clarity to your thought, which is, I think, an important aspect of things. I'm going to come back to the word clarity in a minute, because what can we do as leaders to help the team reset whenever they're dealing with uncertainty, conflict, tensions rising? Things are moving in a direction we don't want it to. Anything that we need to be able to do to step into that space.
Well, we've talked a bit about it, but first and foremost, how even keeled are you, right? And are you reacting, or are you taking action with intentionality, responding appropriately? Then from there, you need to be observing your team, seeing what norm and what not norm is in the patterns of them. So, do they get riled up before each quarterly, forecast is due for the sales numbers? Do they, what patterns are you seeing regardless of what function you do in the business, so that you're observing the team before coming in just blind? And what I mean by that is really just coming in and making assumptions. So, noticing what your team is, and that way you'll know when your team is off, because you'll see, oh, this is a wave that we generally do. Emotions go up and down. And then you can start making the adjustments, looking at levers. If folks are getting overworked at a certain time, are there ways to optimize the processes? Is there the right decision chain? Are they empowered to make the decisions? There's a multitude of reasons that tensions can run high across a team. And let's face it, it's not getting easier in today's world. Things are moving faster than ever. And with more and more companies, I've worked in multinationals for decades, but having distributed teams in a hybrid environment, how we communicate, how we connect with others is more critical than ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And I love this because I don't think you're saying that we need to have a tensionless environment,
Mm-mm.
that productive teams don't need to sit around, holding hands, singing kumbaya, is what I like to say, just bring the tension out of the room. Because what happens, tension gets attention on the things that are important. Disparate views will help the right answer come out of a room. And if we drain all the tension out, um, we're not really being as productive as we need to do, are we? Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility, it's an honor.